And we have breaking news. We're learning why a mother may have killed two of her children, then stashed their bodies in a freezer.
Yeah, 7 Action News reporter Jeff Vaughn, he is live on Detroit's east side with the latest. Jeff, what are police thinking?
Well, Malcolm, good evening. That motive tonight is expanding. Sources tell me the mother accused of killing her two children and stuffing them in a freezer here at this condominium complex tried to keep it a secret so she could continue to draw child support from the state.
Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Sally and what I do here is I research the crap ton out of true crime cases that take my interest, and nothing is off limits. True crime, missing people, mysterious cases, urban legends, I'll even sprinkle in some scary stories, whatever I think will open a discussion with you. And if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe, like, comment. Don't forget to hit that bell notification and you'll get updated every time I upload a video. For my returning subscribers, hi, how are you? Welcome back. Let me know what's going on in your lives by commenting in the comment section down below. You can reach out to me on my Facebook and my Instagram or on my Twitter, and all of them will be linked below. That goes to my newbies too. Reach out to me. I love hearing from you all. I love hearing about your lives. Please remember to be kind. Be kind to everybody. No trolling, no nastiness will be tolerated. I don't like that. You have been warned, and I will delete comments that I don't like. Okay. So, my lovelies, today's case, when I tell you that this case is absolutely terrifying and absolutely disgusting and wild, I'm telling you that. That is not a lie. This case is very, very hard-hitting. It does include themes of child abuse, and it can be quite graphic, so please bear that in mind when you watch. People that have been with me a little while, coming up to a year I think now on my channel, you know that I don't hold back on many of the details. I find them hard to talk about, but sometimes I think it's really important to talk about them, because when you hide behind these things, people don't talk about it. And less of these cases will be reported and less signs will be picked up on because people don't talk about it. And we can't be afraid of these subjects, because I won't live in fear of anything. So I really don't think we should have to. And yes, YouTube don't like it very much, and yes, YouTube tell me off, but I'm not going to change who I am. So I'm just letting you know that some of the stuff I will talk about will be a little bit graphic. So if that's not for you, please feel free to click off, go and watch one of my other videos, go and watch one of my other true crime community people, Stephanie Harlow, Bailey Sarian, any of them, go and watch one of them, come back another day, I really don't mind. For this case, I need to thank my friend Pip once again. She pointed me in the direction of this case because I had never heard of it, and oh my god, the second I read the first paragraph of this document she sent me, I was shook. So thank you, Pip. Thank you very much. You always send me some of the best cases. Please keep doing that. I love you for it. Thank you so much. So today we are going to look at one of the most insane cases that I think I've ever spoken about. And we're going to talk about the case of Mitchelle Blair. Have you heard of her? Well, this woman, if you can call her that, tortured and murdered two of her young children, and she's not even sorry about it.
On or about May 25th, 2014?
May 25th is actually the day she died. Well, the day I killed her.
And you said you killed her by putting a grocery bag over her head?
Yes, that day, Maddie would tell me different things because she was doing this to him for years, and I did not know that. You get what I'm saying? And I didn't find out till 9 months later. She had started with Steven. She ruined my son, okay? She started with Steven before he even started. So yes, I put a bag over her head, but it got worse that day. Yes, I did. It got worse that day because Matthew would tell me how she would take her pad, her menstrual pad, and squeeze her blood out in his mouth. Okay? And it was over with after that. It was over with.
You meant to kill her?
I definitely meant to kill her.
Okay. Wasn't an accident?
No, not at all. If I had a chance to do it again, I would.
So let's take a look at this case. Let's take a deep dive straight in there head first and see what went wrong that ended in 2 of her babies being found dead. I'm going to set the scene for you with this one. So it was the 24th of March 2015, mid-morning. It was chilly, but the sun was trying to break through the clouds in the east side of Detroit, Michigan. A young woman called Mitchelle Blair was sitting at her friend's home with 2 of her 4 children when the 36th District Court served an eviction notice on her home. As she wasn't home, they took it upon themselves to start removing her furniture from the apartment. In the living room of the most disgusting house that I've ever seen, I'll pop some pictures in. She did not keep her house clean, let me tell you that. In this living room sat a deep white chest freezer. And just a little side note, who has a chest freezer in their living room anyway? Is that a normal thing? We don't have them like that in the UK. They go in the kitchen in the UK, but maybe it's a normal thing in America, I don't know. Anyway, the court officials decided that they needed to open this freezer because they needed to empty it so they could move it more easily, obviously. Like when you move a house, you empty your freezer, you defrost it. However, when they opened this freezer, they made a horrific discovery. A young teenage girl was laid, dead, wrapped in plastic bags, and it was clear she had been deceased for a while. The police were obviously called and the apartment was immediately evacuated. Once they arrived, the police, the detectives, they carefully removed the partly decomposed body, but obviously she was frozen, so she was still in a pretty good condition. But there was actually more. Underneath her body was another body, a child, a young boy that looked to be between the ages of 7 and 10. This discovery shocked the neighbourhood, and the neighbours were quick to inform the detective where Mitchelle Blair was. The police quickly ascended upon her friend's apartment, where they found Blair and 2 of her children, who were 8 and 17. Blair's other 2 children, Stephen, 9, and Stoney, 13, were not with her. It was extremely clear to the police that the 2 bodies in that freezer were the bodies of Stephen and Stoney, her children, dead, with horrific injuries. But how and why did they end up there? Mitchelle Angela Blair, or Angel as her friends and family called her, was born on the 10th of May 1979. Her childhood isn't really that clear, there's not much online, but what we do know is that she was raised by an abusive single mother. Her mother was physically and emotionally abusive to her and made her feel like she just was an unwanted child. At some point within her childhood, the age is unknown, Blair gets up the courage and goes to tell her mum that she is being molested by a female family friend. Her mother, who is an absolute bitch, by the way, if this is true, basically told her, "What the fuck do you want me to do about it?"
Can you talk me through the type of abuse that you had to suffer as a kid,
You mean sexual abuse?
if that's what happened?
That definitely did happen to me. That's why I know exactly how would have grew up. I told my mother what happened to me, and the only thing she said was, "It's over with, so what the you want me to do about it?" What you mean what I want you to do? You get what I'm saying? So all I could do is go back and sit in my room and just sit there and look stupid. I'm a kid, and I'm just telling you what happened to me. You didn't do about it. And plus I still had to see the person coming in and out my house. You still friends with that person.
And what made this even worse was that Blair would continue to have to see this woman all the time because she continued to be friends with her mother. So until she could leave at the age of 18, her abuser was around every day, and her mum didn't even give a flying crap. Professionals who have looked into this case after the crime say that Blair suffered with intense PTSD from obviously the abuse, and any mention of abuse or molestation would be a trigger for her, and it would result in violent outbursts, which is good to know for later. Now we flash forward several years. Blair is now living in a townhouse apartment in the east side of Detroit, Michigan, with her 4 children. She had her first child when she was only 18 years old, and that is hard. Believe me, I had my first child when I just turned 18, so I understand how hard it is, but I was married at the time. The oldest child was Gabrielle, who was 17 at the time of this crime. Then it went Stoney, who was 13, Stephen, 9, and finally Matthew, who was 8, the baby. Gabrielle and Stoney had the same father, who is called Alexander Dowsey, and Stephen and Matthew also had the same father, which is Stephen and Berry. So the 2 girls had one dad, the 2 boys had another dad. Because this case has got a lot of information, I'm going to kind of break it down into a little bit of timeline and throw in my opinions, that kind of thing. So, on the 18th of September 2002, Child Protective Services, who we will call CPS throughout the rest of this video, because they will be mentioned again, believe me, received a phone call from an anonymous caller. This person reported that both Gabrielle and Stoney had burns all over their hands. This was investigated by CPS and they did confirm that there was in fact abuse in the home. However, we don't know the outcome, as this file was destroyed. Okay, so we're off to a great start. 21st of February 2005, so a few years after this, CPS received a second phone call. But this time, Gabrielle and Stoney's father was actually the one that made this call. The girls were only really small at the time, and his sister, so the girls' aunt, was bathing them when they came to their dad's for the weekend, and she noticed that they had what appeared to be whip marks on their backs. In fact, she said they looked like, quote, healed slashes, end quote. CPS investigated again and once again agreed that it was in fact abuse within the home. The family were referred to other services, which include Blair going to counselling, but once again, we don't know what happened. Did she use this service? It's unlikely, in my opinion. I don't think she did, but we don't know. 2006, Blair herself, who is still under CPS, made a statement to them as she had heard a rumour that the girls' paternal grandfather, so their dad's dad, had molested one of his other granddaughters. And at the time it was alleged that he was staying with his son. So Blair made a decision to stop the girls, Gabrielle and Stoney, going to their dads. Or at least that's what she told CPS. She claims now that she offered for him to come to their home and visit the girls, but it isn't clear if that was actually said, and it definitely didn't happen. He never went to see his daughters. In April of 2012, so we're jumping 6 years now, so the girls' dad hadn't seen their dad really in 6 years. But anyway, in April of 2012, Stephen and Michael's dad says that this is the last time that he ever speaks to his children. And Gabrielle and Stoney's dad also said somewhere in 2012 or somewhere in 2013 was the last time he had any contact with his children. So I think he maybe spoke to them on the phone. Maybe. I don't 100% know, but maybe this is what happened. So the following information that I'm going to tell you is actually all alleged. It's all come from the mouth of Blair. So it's during her trial appearances, it's videos that I've seen on YouTube, interviews that she's done. I couldn't find anything where the children said anything. So this is all coming from what she's saying. So please remember that before you make any comments later. In late August of 2012, Blair alleges that she came home in the afternoon from where? Who knows? But she was met at the door by her eldest daughter, Gabrielle. Gabrielle went on to tell her mother that her little brother, 8-year-old Matthew, who had been behaving strangely that day, had been playing with some dolls and he had started making them do sexual things to each other, and he was talking in quite explicit way, but through play. As I said earlier, any mention of abuse like this or molestation, then Blair would just lose her mind. She proceeds to ask Michael for more details about where he had heard this kind of stuff or what happened to him. And eventually he did tell her that his older brother, 9-year-old Stephen, had been doing what he called, quote, bad things to him. Furious, Blair made the decision to, inverted commas, punish Stephen by doing the things to him that he had been doing to Michael. So Blair asked Michael for more details on what exactly had been done, and these details basically become reenactments for the, inverted commas, punishments that she would do to Stephen. I'll give you a few examples of what happens, and I will be talking about some of Stephen's injuries. This is a trigger warning. If you don't want to hear this stuff, it can be quite graphic, then please click off now and come back later maybe, or go and watch somebody else, or go and get on with your day. You can always come back when I've got a different video for you. That's absolutely fine, no hard feelings, but this is the point now where I'm going to be talking a bit more in depth, so please, you have been warned, this is your trigger warning. So, one of the confessions that Michael told his mother was that Stephen would sit on his, so Michael's back, and push his face into the plastic of the mattress cover. He said that he struggled to breathe and would sometimes, inverted commas, fall asleep. So Blair reenacted this by getting a plastic shopping bag, putting it over Stephen's head and suffocating him until he passed out. This would be done several times a day for several days. Another punishment was that Stephen would apparently put things around Michael's neck and strangle him until he yet again fell asleep. So Blair, as a form of punishment, put a ligature around Stephen's neck. This would normally be a belt or a dressing gown belt, and she would lift him off the ground until he passed out. Again, this would be done a few times a day for several days. Other injuries and punishments that Stephen suffered were bruising from being punched and kicked regularly. His private area was burned with boiling hot water so bad that the skin started to come off. He had burns on his back, his stomach and his bottom that were consistent of cigarette burns, which doesn't make sense to me if Stephen was doing it, because I'm pretty sure he's not a smoker. Just saying, just remember that. He was also made to drink Windex because he had made his little brother drink Windex apparently. He was starved. There was tears in his mouth from being hit in the face so hard that his teeth had pierced the inside of his mouth. There was lots of healing scars all over his body as well, and he had broken and missing teeth. The autopsy examiner did say in his testimony in court that the injuries were consistent with the story that Blair had told the court, but they couldn't determine for sure, obviously, where all the injuries came from because they weren't there. Blair repeated all of these punishments for a week, possibly a week and a half, she wasn't 100% sure. And on the 30th of August 2012, little Stephen, who was only 8 years old, succumbed to his awful injuries and passed away. Blair wrapped him up in one of his favourite blankets and placed him inside the freezer. The autopsy determined that his cause of death was blunt force trauma after having so many beatings to his head and face. Blair still claims to this day that she didn't mean to kill Stephen. She wanted him to suffer and to be in pain, just like she knew Michael would have been. But the day before he died, she had decided to stop his punishments as he didn't look well. However, she didn't try to get him help or hand herself in once he actually died. When she was asked why she didn't hand herself in, she claims that her youngest son begged her not to, so she didn't. During the court hearing later on, more of what Stephen had allegedly done to Michael came out. Some of these things that Michael claimed happened to him include Stephen peeing on him and putting his privates in Michael's ears and eyes. He also claimed that Stephen would take his food and try to make him starve. Again, all this is alleged. Just remember that. After Stephen's death in 2013, Blair took her children out of school. She told the local authority that she planned on homeschooling them. However, only a few weeks before, one of Stoney's teachers had reported that her attendance was quite poor, and he'd reported this to CPS. But then he retired, and it took him several weeks to follow up. But by this time the children had already been taken out of school. But once he did his follow-ups, CPS told him that poor school attendance isn't officially neglect, so there was nothing to worry about. Now, I don't know how that works in America, but in the UK, we have this thing, right? And you have to have so much attendance, otherwise you will get child services called on you, which is the same as CPS, Child Protective Services. But we call it like social services or family services. My daughter, not last year because it was COVID, but the year before, she had a lot of time off because she's got an issue with her bowel. And she had to have a lot of time off school. And her attendance was in like the 96% range. So she'd had probably a couple of weeks in a few months off, whatever it was. And I actually got threatened with social services. We can't take our children out of school for holidays. We have to get what's called an authorised absence if you want to take your children out of school. Otherwise you get like £100 fine or £200 fine. So I don't know why it's different in America. I don't know if it is different in America, but I agree it's not necessarily a form of neglect, but it's definitely worth looking into if their attendance is as low as this teacher was saying. In my opinion, okay. In May of 2013, so actually not long after Stephen died, Michael went to his mother again and told her that the abuse hadn't stopped. And he told her that Stormy had actually been carrying it on for the last 9 months. He told Blair that Stoney had actually been doing it with Stephen, and he told her that she had raped him many, many times. He also went on to tell her that Stoney and Stephen used to have sex in front of him and then would proceed to force it upon him. He also claimed that Stormy squeezed used sanitary towels into his mouth, if that's true, and that she would sit on his face with no underpants on. It's really, really hard. Anyway, I'm just going to carry on and we'll talk about it at the end. Upon hearing this, Blair adopted the same punishment methods that she had used on Stephen, but it appeared that her attacks on Stoney were much worse than on Stephen. That's not to say his weren't terrible, because they were definitely terrible, but she seemed to like step up a level with Stoney. And in fact, it's clear in interviews and in the court that Blair hated her daughter. I'll quickly insert a clip right now, but wow.
And this is why I say my kids knew better, because I've always told them everything that happened to me. I told them why, because I don't understand why it took me so long to tell my mom when I was a kid. You never talked to me about like this, but when I did come to you, you didn't do so I always made sure I told my kids this. I told them what happened to me, how it happened to me, how the made me feel in detail. And I say, if anybody ever touches y'all, you better tell me. They knew. I always talk to my kids about that touching from anybody. So they definitely knew. And this is the part that really gets me. I used to tell her, rape is the worst thing you can do. Just make it. I tell her all the time. They used to make me feel like I was nothing. It made me feel like I wasn't. You turn around and you do that to my son, you knew exactly what you was doing to him. She knew exactly what the she was doing to him. So yeah, I don't care what anybody think. She had to go, period.
So yeah, it's very clear she didn't like her. So some of the punishments that were inflicted on Stoney and some of the injuries that she got are as followed. She was punched and kicked repeatedly. She also had the plastic bag put over her head. She was scalded with hot water. She was hit over the head with a plank of wood. She had a fractured arm. She was hit in the back in the tailbone area with a wooden stick and wooden planks. She was starved, only being allowed one small bowl of oatmeal a day. She had burns all over the entirety of her body. She had an open wound on her neck. She was burned on the back with an iron. She had cuts to her face and inside her mouth. She was burnt with a hot curling iron, and she was also hit with this curling iron. All of her teeth were pretty much broken. There was a piece of flesh missing from her shoulder that looked like it had acid poured into it, and pieces of her ears were missing. And the people that did the autopsy, what are they called? Medical examiners. They actually said it looked like her ears had been chewed. And then on the 25th of May 2013, Blair put the plastic bag over Stoney's head and began suffocating her. She also begins to hit her over the head over and over and over again with a wooden plank until she wasn't moving anymore. This is the moment that she lost her fight and she succumbed to her injuries. Blair had achieved what she wanted. She had killed her 13-year-old daughter, 13, who she had been torturing for 2 weeks. The medical examiners say that she died from blunt force trauma to the head. Not that it was easy to determine the causes of death of either of the children anyway, because after they were found in the freezer, it took about 2 to 3 weeks for their bodies to thaw. And the injuries were still pretty much intact because she'd basically preserved the bodies, but it's still quite difficult to find the cause of death. But it's much easier than if the bodies had decomposed completely. Anyway, after she died, Blair made her other daughter, Gabrielle, pick up Stoney's naked and broken body, wrap her in plastic and put her in the freezer. During the next 2 years, Blair and her 2 remaining children lived in the house with 2 dead bodies in the freezer. They were walking around, they were eating, they were breathing, they were living their normal lives. But her other two children must have been absolutely terrified of their mother. Could you imagine that you've just witnessed her doing this to them, and you'd be afraid to breathe in the wrong direction? So I'm sure they were absolutely terrified. Blair had always struggled to support herself and her children. Being a single mother was hard. She had struggled financially. She had always relied on her family heavily for help. But by 2005, they couldn't or didn't want to help her anymore, so they encouraged her to get a job. She did not take this advice. Instead, she just stopped paying her rent entirely and eventually got evicted from her home, which takes us back full circle to where we started this video. Once she was found at a friend's house, Blair was arrested and charged with 11 counts, including murder, child abuse, and child abuse with another child present. And in June 2015, Blair entered guilty pleas on 2 charges: the first-degree premeditated murder of Stoney and the felonious homicide of Stephen. She was sentenced to 2 life sentences to run consecutively, so they'll run back to back, basically. Since her incarceration, Blair has done several interviews and they send chills down my spine. I will link some of them in the description box down below, but this woman is a monster. She's a monster. Monster. Both of the fathers attempted to get custody of their living child, but CPS stepped in and refused to give them custody for various reasons. One is that they were actually charged in this case for allowing the abuse and murders to happen, as the police thought that if they were good parents, they would have known that something was wrong, and they didn't hear from their children for several years, a long time, like 9 years. They didn't hear from their children, and they didn't even question it, apparently. So, yeah, they were charged in this crime. They also weren't very stable parents, to be honest. They both had addictions to different things, like porn and gambling. Neither of them had permanent residency anywhere. They both had previous criminal records. So Michael's dad lost his parental rights entirely, and Michael ended up in care, I believe, and he's been given a new identity, as he should. Gabrielle's father kept his parental rights, but only because she was 18 and she actually needed a parent to get social benefits and to get help so she could live, because she couldn't go into the care system because she, like I say, she was 18. She was considered legally an adult, so she needed help with that kind of thing. So I don't know where she is now. I'm pretty sure she's also been given a new identity, again, as she should. Don't go looking for her, don't even search it up. It's none of our business, just let the girl move on. Now, I know you're going to have questions, because I had questions too. So I looked a little deeper into some of the questions that I had. The first was, where were the dads? Well, it's obviously clear they weren't perfect parents, but they told the court that Blair was good at keeping them away, even if they wanted to be there. She would make excuses like the kids aren't home or we're busy, and eventually time just passed on more and more and more. But I'm pretty sure they regret now. They regret not just showing up, just showing up at the apartment and finding their kids. I'm sure they regret that. I mean, who wouldn't? And the same goes for her family and friends. Like, I asked myself, well, where are her family and friends? Why aren't they questioning where the kids are? But again, it appears that Blair made excuses, and she must have been getting really, really good at it, because her own mother lived in the same apartment complex as her, and she managed to fob her off with excuses all the time. So I still feel like if it was me personally, I might have done things a bit differently, but I'm not in that situation, so I don't really want to judge. I'm not a judgmental person. I'm not here to judge them. It's happened, so there's nothing they can do. They can't go back and change it, so I don't know. Another one was, why didn't she report the abuse instead of doing what she did? So why didn't she go to CPS or the police and say, my son and my daughter are molesting my other son? Why didn't she do that? Well, actually, in simple terms, she didn't want to. But it does go deeper than that, I think. For one, she actually did make a phone call asking a generic question to her CPS worker. She asked what would happen if this kind of scenario came up, and she was told by this person that all of the children would be taken into protective custody and she could potentially lose all 4 of them. So that frit her, and she decided not to. But also, I don't know if anybody else has picked up on this, but I picked up something in one of her interviews. She told the interviewer, and I think it was Crime Watch Daily, but anyway, she said that she spoke to her children about what happened to her as a child, and it seems that she probably went into a lot of detail because she just seems like she would. So could it be possible that Michael, who remember is little, he's a little boy, did he take these stories on into his playtime with his dolls, and then when his mother was asking him, because when molestation and things are brought up, everybody says that she kind of loses her mind a little bit and she just gets angrier and angrier because she's got PTSD, so, these things happen. But could she have just kept going and going and going and going at Michael until he made up all these stories? And then she started abusing the children and doing these horrible things to them. And she was telling them, admit it, I know what you're doing. And then eventually they just admitted it because they thought it would make her stop. Could that be possible? Let me know in the comment section what you think. Am I on like a wrong thread here? Am I losing my mind? Has this case really got to me that I don't know what I'm talking about anymore? Please, just comment down below, let me know what you think. And also, it's very obvious that she was hurting her children before she found out about this alleged abuse, because the children were already reported to CPS way before this started. But that also brings into question CPS, and CPS are questioned for everything. Because they just don't do their job. Like, this is a reoccurring theme in these kind of child abuse cases. The system is just broken, and it's got all these holes in it, and all these vulnerable children just slip right through these holes, and they always end up dead. It's just, I mean, that's a whole other story, but just CPS is just broken. Even the one in the UK social services system is broken. So, my thoughts and opinions. Honestly, this is really hard one. And I don't mean it's hard because I condone what she did. What she did is vile. Them kids deserved much better. Much better. They deserved a much better mother in the first place. But if anybody deserves the death penalty, electric chair, she certainly does. But that's a different thing. But the thing is, I don't know in my heart whether she is telling the truth, or whether Michael is telling the truth, or whether anybody is telling the truth. Because in court, she's just a very dramatic, opinionated person. And I feel like she would lie about stuff. Like, she could abuse her children in the first place for many reasons. Maybe she was a horrible person. Maybe it was her mental health. I don't know. But then she probably would go on and lie about it. I just think she would. I just do. But it's difficult because none of us know what really happened. And the only people that know what happened are them, the family, the 5 of them. And 2 of them are dead. So I don't think we'll ever know what really happened. But the point is that she's serving 2 life sentences, and it's unlikely she'll ever get out from prison. So that is a good thing. Because despite the abuse allegations, she still did something terrible. So she still needs to pay for her crime, which is what I said in my Gypsy Rose Blanchard video. Yes, she was a victim of child abuse herself, but she still needed to pay a price for what she did. And I think 10 years is too excessive for that, but that's a whole different thing as well. But anyway, I'd really like to hear your thoughts down below. I don't really have a solid opinion on this case. I don't, because it's really hard, because I know I flip-flop between opinions and stuff all the time. Sometimes I say we should be judgmental, sometimes I say we shouldn't. I'm very much a hypocrite, and I can admit that I'm a hypocrite because I am. But in this case, I don't know. But I would be really interested to know what you think of this case. Do you think she's lying? Do you think this really happened? I'm leaning towards that I don't believe her, but I think that's just because I'm judging her based on her actions in court, because of the way she behaves, because of the way she speaks. And that's bad. I shouldn't be judging anybody anyway. But I feel like in some way and I'm entitled to judge her because of what she did. Anyway, I'm going off a tangent. But yes, so that's the case for today. I'm sorry it was a really heavy one. It's not okay, no matter what those kids did. But like I say, it's a really hard one today. But please remember to like, comment and share this video if you want to. Also feel free to subscribe, that would mean the world to me, and turn on the bell notification, please. Also, please be kind to everyone, especially in the comment section down below. I've already said it, but I'll say it again. Trolling and nasty comments will be removed. You have been warned. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate you, I love you, I care for you. So please stay safe out there. Don't kill anybody, and I'll see you in the next video. I love you guys. Bye. Mwah.
Jet planes in the night sky with you. Getting high in the sunrise with you. Getting through all the bad times with you. I wasn't missing a thing, no I do. And I wish that I could build a time machine, 'cause time moves on, and now you're gone. Oh, if only I could build a time machine, I'd come and get you. I can't forget you. I miss you, I miss you.